Today's talk time has got some sensitive topics. We're going to be talking about abuse. So if it is something that is a bit of a trigger for you, perhaps today is not necessarily the talk time to listen to. So if you do need support around these topics, I will have some links below that you can look at to seek some help. But for those that really want to delve into how they might get support around abuse, I hope that this talk time will be useful for you. Do you believe thoughts carry energy that impact others? Let's discuss how shared frequencies might explain the phenomena like collective calm or collective anxiety. Today we have Teresa Saunders, my fellow colleague. I'm Meredith McCarthy, and we're going to have a chat about this. I hope you find it interesting. Even sitting in a room, we know that the heart can sync up with the other person you're talking to. So there's something about that human connection, isn't there?
There is, and I mean, I'm sure I'm not the only one, but many of you, if not all of you, have actually entered into a space and you've either gone, oh, this seems beautiful and really calm and relaxing, or you've gone, oh, I don't really like it here, but I'm not too sure why, you know?
Yeah. When we're looking at the idea of the thoughts affecting our environment, I do think, and I'm a great believer in co-creation, okay? So the ability to have the right thoughts and enough people having that thought actually collectively creates that reality. What are your thoughts there?
Oh, for sure. I mean, you've only got to look at parties or big social gatherings and where people start to hype other people, like you get your drumming or whatever, and people all start to sync with that beat and that energy just grows bigger and bigger. Yeah.
Can be quite magical, eh?
It certainly can be. Yeah.
Yeah.
Emotions
And I think
run
that's that tribal kind of flavor where people get into that same sort of frequency of being and they come together in mass. And that can happen also on the negative. I have an interesting childhood memory. For those that might go back to, I think it was the 80s, and they had this movie where these little wee creatures would multiply, and I can't remember what they were called.
Oh, would it be the Gremlins?
I think so. Yes.
Yeah, when water touches them. Yep, one of my favourite movies.
Right. So there I was, a teenager, and at the end of the movie, we were all asked to exit in a different way. We weren't allowed to go back onto Queen Street. At that time, I was living in Auckland in New Zealand, and the picture theatre was on Queen Street, higher end of Queen Street. And we were all asked to go out the exit, the emergency exits, to the back of the theatre, and we could hear this terrible noise, and it kind of felt like we were back in the Gremlin movie because there was chaos happening on Queen Street. And what had happened is they had some live music playing at Aotearoa Square or something, and something happened, and a huge, big, massive group of people started to get really violent. And it ended up going right down Queen Street where people were smashing cars and shop frontages and everything. And there was this mass group of people who just went from being really friendly and lovely to trashing Queen Street. It was a big riot.
Oh, wow.
So when we're kind of looking at that collective mind, something happens where people get switched on to either that negative kind of experience and I guess they start to do what everyone else is doing and they don't think about it anymore. So there's this very animal instinct thing that kicks in and they just start doing what everyone else is doing. But there's also that positive side to things. So if people are coming together in mass, let's say churches actually, when people congregate and they say a group prayer, this is very powerful and you can feel the sacred energy of that, you know. people who come in and meditate and en masse. There's definitely a difference in that experience or that space, isn't there?
The energy, just you sort of all attract. It's like whether it's positive or negative, the lightness attracts, and you either go with that flow or you repel against it.
So, when we're kind of looking at that idea of people and their ability to run a nice frequency of being or a not so nice frequency of being, if we go back to the family unit, and let's say you've got a couple of kids that are in a very stressful household where there might be different levels of violence. So that could be from physical violence to emotional abuse, neglect, or other things, So when we're looking at that, this collective energy, quite often people just shut down. They don't just respond by fighting back. They just shut down and they don't say anything. So the partner doesn't say anything for fear of it getting worse, and the children don't say anything because they don't want their parents to get in trouble, or they don't want to get in trouble. So everyone just shuts down. And there's this dysfunction that happens for years and years and years that goes by. And it's not until often the children break away and they start their own lives outside of that first experience of what family is. And maybe they start a relationship with someone and they realize, oh, not all relationships are like what I was going through as a child. And that can start a reflection process. What are your thoughts when I'm starting to talk about these things? What's popping up in your mind?
Oh, for certainly. And if we're living in a certain environment, we normalize it. To us, that becomes normalized until we actually remove ourselves from that environment, or a circumstances presents itself that we are in a different environment. We don't know that maybe that normalized environment is not necessarily the way everybody else sees the world or how things have to be.
And I think this is really important when we're looking at overcoming trauma, that there is a time where it won't always be the same environment that you might have been in for a period of time, that you potentially have a chance to address those things in a really therapeutic way. And what I hope people understand about hypnotherapy is it's not about re-traumatizing that person if they're wanting to get up, let go of past stuff, past beliefs, past reactions that have been built in. So they might be pushing away those that love them, or maybe they become the aggressor and they're not too proud of that. So there could be a whole lot of reasons why a person might come in seeking help. And it's often from that collective unconscious programming that's happened in that family space that's really dictated a lot of how they are seeing the world, how they see themselves in the world, what they feel they can or can't do or achieve. All of these programs definitely are something to look into. What does that client need? And I think as a hypnotherapist, this is something that we address, I feel, in a really healthy way. We're not focusing on only what's happened, but we're helping that client to work out what comes next, what they need.
For sure, yeah. And you don't have to re-traumatize them by going through that process at all.
There is a number of hypnotic techniques that empower the client to go back as the adult that they are today and speak with that younger self. And it's a very private journey, actually. So the client has this space that you hold, and you don't need to know what they're saying to their younger self. You don't need to know what they're choosing to do or who they're even choosing to speak to. You know, you can do it like that. You can ask them to say it out loud or in their mind. You can give them choice, because quite often when people say things out loud, it feels even more solid and more real, as if it's happened. And this is the thing, when you empower the client to have a voice, to take charge over how things had been affecting them, and give them an opportunity to stand into their power again, incredible things can occur.
Yeah, I think it's remembering as a hypnotherapist that it's your client's journey and their freedom of choice which makes that difference. So some clients coming to you, you know, they might want to talk about it, and that might be their way of actually shifting, changing and making that shift to a positive new way. Whereas another person at this stage might not feel like it's safe to do that and would rather still do that internally, but they could still make a big shift because that can still be powerful for them.
Many times when there's been abuse, a person can fear what change might be like because they've normalized abuse. So they don't know what it feels like to feel safe. They don't know what it feels like to feel happy. They don't know what it feels like to be loved, you know? And sometimes it's like inviting them to start a seed of hope. It may not be that the next day they're going to be able to be fully loving or feel lovable yet, and that's okay. However, I think the job of a good therapist is to plant that seed of hope somewhere, that they are gently journeying into a better and better version of themselves, and they're journeying gently into a better and better version of their lives, and that they can collectively lean into healthy relationships and what they might be like. So a lot of times they may still be in contact with various people who have been abusers of the past. And so many people choose at some point, and I'm not saying this is the answer for everyone, but some people choose to create distance between themselves as they've become an adult and have that choice to do that. Some people will change countries, literally. They'll fly to another country so they have the biggest distance possible from those that they don't really want much to do with as they move forward as adults. So people find their own creative ways of finding that distance. What do you think about that, Teresa?
For sure. And I mean, it doesn't have to be something as big as that. It can be on a different circumstance where you learn different ways to actually deal, because you can't deal with things. You can't be in control of what the abuser is actually doing if you are the survivor. But you can control the way you react to what's going on. So it might not be about distance if that's not going to be your thing, but it could be a way of that, instead of you fighting back verbally and causing even more arguments or something, that you actually are more silent and reflect and take time to react and think about that. So, you know, when we're talking about abuse, it could be many different ways, and we're not passing blame on to either the survivor or the abuser. We're just saying there are different ways to look at that and react, and that's different for different people in different situations, and the way that energy is for them as well. Yeah.
I mean, when we're brought up, and let's say a person's been used to being belittled, so you're a blah blah blah, or you can't do anything properly, and these kind of downgrades all the time. It takes often the adult self a while to realize that that's not okay, and that not all people talk to one another in that way, and especially those that love each other don't talk in that way. And that may shock even maybe some people who are listening to this podcast, and if it does, maybe this is a catalyst for you to think about where you're at. And I realise, this goes out to people, and we are talking about sensitive topics here. But I want to speak from my heart out to, those that are going through or have gone through different levels of abuse, that there is life beyond it. There really is. You can reinvent who you are, how you feel in the world, and you can feel better about things. And hypnotherapy definitely has some amazing hypnotherapy is definitely a way of helping people overcome those fears, those blocks, to let go of that trauma in a safe and holistic way. Okay, so that is something that I want to really put forward here. I will, though, put a disclaimer that not every hypnotherapist is the same. Not every training that they've gone through is the same. So that you might go to a hypnotherapist and they just don't feel right. It's okay. Go somewhere else. Go find another one if they're not quite your vibe, if it doesn't feel like you can really talk to them and feel comfortable enough to do that sort of work, because it's not light work. It is big work. It's important that you trust whoever it is that you choose to seek help with.
And I, it's like with your doctor or your friends, you have different rapport with those, and a hypnotherapist may specialise and be really good in one field, but trauma and overcoming that might not actually be their expertise. So as Meredith says, sort of ask them, is there somebody that you would recommend that I actually go to for this if you feel that it's not actually working with that particular hypnotherapist? And a good hypnotherapist will pass you on, recommend somebody, or say, yeah, I totally understand.
And some hypnotherapists have extremely long sessions, and you might be with them for 4 hours. That this is how some hypnotherapists run their sessions. In others, it might be only an hour or 90 minutes or even a half hour to begin with, to see if you have that connection, and that's okay too. So all hypnotherapists run their clinics in their own way, and they might have slightly different methods of journeying someone through that change process or empowerment process. So, do look around. If you are looking for someone to do this sort of work with, connect, read their websites, get a feeling of what their approach is, and make your decision that way. You've got to feel comfortable is the baseline advice I have.
Yeah, I'm just going to jump in there and say, we're talking about frequency. You'll know when you read the website or make contact with your hypnotherapist whether you're going to gel or not, whether you're going to get on or feel that rapport, that you're going to be able to open up to them. So trust your instincts. And if it doesn't feel right, then you have a right to say, oh, I'm sorry, it's not quite what I expected. And your hypnotherapist should be understanding on that, because likely is that they have the same sort of feeling as well.
Yeah. You're not going to be best friends with them, but you need to feel comfortable enough that you can trust that they're going to hold space and journey you in a really helpful, positive way. Okay, so it's not about re-traumatizing. So if they're getting you to talk about something you don't feel comfortable about talking about that, and they don't respect that, then that is maybe a red flag. Okay, So if you're saying, I'd rather not go there, and they're insisting, hey, no, it's really helpful. This is your opportunity to sort of really be honest here. That's pushing and coercing. That is not a therapeutic approach that I would ever recommend anyone do. So you've got to kind of hopefully get a therapist that's going to respect how your needs, what you need from the session, and really listen and tune into that with respect. Is there anything else you'd like to add there, Teresa?
I just think explore, look around, and as I said before, if it doesn't feel right, then trust your gut instinct, because you know. Yeah,
Yeah.
you know. And frequency, next time when you go out, notice whether you really enjoy that environment, or whether you sort of think, oh no, I'd rather go to the other shop next time, or the other cafe. Ask yourself why would that be?
Yeah. So when we're kind of looking at that idea of your tribe, or people that you feel like you can really trust, that may be an experience you've never had before, especially if you've been through trauma and only been in abusive situations and abusive friendships. I just want to give you, hopefully, a seed of hope out there. That is not everyone. Not everyone works that way, and I hope that one day, if that's been your experience, that you get to meet nice, kind people in your lifetime. But to do that, often we need to position ourselves in that understanding and intention of trust. So please, if you're kind of on the fence and you've been thinking about getting help, and you're ready to get that help today, go find a hypnotherapist in your area. Sometimes doing that sort of work in session in front of that person, not just online, can feel really safer. Online is fine, but there are some kinds of work that I think it's nice energetically to be present in that space with that therapist. That's just my view. What are your thoughts on that, Teresa?
I think both ways. Yes, there is. It depends on what you're working with, and it depends on that person, because obviously if that person is going to get emotional on that, then sometimes it is nice and easier to actually hold that space face to face rather than online, as you say. But then there's some people that would feel more comfortable doing that on, and releasing, not in the room with somebody, but over the internet. So I think it really is a personal preference. But when you're actually considering it, making that decision, think about, do I actually feel like I would need that physical support in that moment, because you know yourself, or am I going to be able to cope and feel safe still if I'm online?
Yeah, absolutely. And I've had a number of people who have been in a really critical emotional place that have had a support person sitting next to them on their couch over Zoom, and I've been doing the therapy while they've had their support person right there, because they felt really, really overwhelmed and even starting to do any work with anyone. So for sure that can happen, and if that's you, that's fine as well. I do know, though, it is amazing when you can get to go to a session and be there in person. The space is set up for that. Often there's a recliner chair or a place to lie down and just get cozy in a hypnotherapy office setting. So at home, often there might be accidental distractions like the cat and dog or some other humans that might be home or accidentally walk in on you. I did have a very interesting moment where someone's son came into the room while she was in hypnosis, and the phone was just looking up at the ceiling, so I couldn't actually see her, but I saw this little face looking into the phone, wondering where the voice was coming from. So, those things can happen sometimes when you're in session, and the therapist, we don't have control over your environment at home. So sometimes coming into a space that's not your home can also be a good breakaway from that environment that might actually be a causation of your stress, anxiety, or things that have been triggering you. So coming to a neutral space can be very therapeutic too. Yeah. So we've talked about quite a lot of stuff, and during this, if you do feel like you need support, we do have the association here in New Zealand, the NZAPH, which has a directory of different hypnotherapists. We're also here, if you wanted a session with Teresa or myself, you can get in touch. But if you're somewhere else in the world, we do Zoom as well. We can do that. But if you are overseas and you'd rather see someone in person, there are plenty of amazing hypnotherapists out there in the world doing incredible work. And, just do what you need to do for you. I hope that this one's helped those out there that might have been curious about hypnotherapy and maybe how it helps with trauma, and also just the idea of that normalisation of sometimes the trauma cycle, and how we can actually break away from that and we can start to live better lives, and that collective consciousness, coming together and starting to get new people around you that have a nicer, more peaceful way about them. I think that is a big part of the healing journey for many.
Yeah, for sure. And I'd just like to say that I'm sure in the comments below, Meredith, if you'll just pop in a few support numbers there or websites, so that if somebody is listening to this and it does hit some emotional note that there is some sort of contacts there, if they don't contact us or hypnotherapists, that they can reach out to somebody else and maybe talk to.
Yeah. And often too, look, if it's not hypnotherapy and you're looking for a counsellor or something, often your workplace, they often have EAP services, or reaching out to your doctor and asking whether they can refer you on to someone. If you don't have a lot of money, there may be avenues that you can get funding for support. So it's understandable. A lot of hypnotherapists don't have the funding options, so that often takes people off the board. But if you are able to support yourself in going in and seeking the help that you want, do shop around, find the right person that fits right for you. So thank you very much, Teresa, for joining me today, and thank you everyone out there for tuning in to this episode of Talk Time. We're here every week, and if you're interested in training to become a hypnotherapist, you can check out the school website, www.nzach.ac.nz. We've got a new round happening in February, but no matter where you are in the year, you can come on board and join. And it should be a good year this year.
Yep. And before you click off, please click the subscribe, like, and share button, and invite your friends and family to listen to our podcast.
Nice. Thank you, everyone. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.